You said that the easiest thing you've done is actually leaving that company.
I was very prepared.
A lot of my friends that have exited companies go through this period of depression.
But for me, it's mostly been technology that I have accidentally stumbled upon as a relatively young guy, technology as a sector. I moved to Hong Kong to basically start the first digital, fully online-based magazine, and this was in 2005. And we kind of built that to the leading digital luxury and lifestyle publishing group across Asia Pacific.
What's the pressure like from the investors?
I think
I'm here with Richard. Richard just completely blew my mind about Sweden. But so I'm when I saw you come through for the podcast, I was fascinated because I think, one, your backstory is really cool. Being in the magazine space and everything you've done. I do want you to go through that. But you are currently the founder of MyPetGo and Pet Longevity Group. And I am a pet owner, and a lot of our listeners are obviously pet owners. Everybody on my team, I think everybody on my team has pets. We love them. My head of operations has like way too many cats. So, but what you're doing with AI and kind of like longevity of pets and everything, I think is really interesting. And it's something that I've never even really thought about before. So we'll get into all of that. But Richard, can you just kind of walk me through, tell me about your business experience and all the companies that you've started and exited and all of it.
Right. Okay. So, we have an hour, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you some nuggets here. But first of all, thank you for having me on. And,
of course.
And look, I've done a couple of things, I've built a pizzeria from scratch.
That's cool.
Which was interesting. It was actually my wife's, so I was more kind of helping out, but you know, it's another type of entrepreneurship where you kind of take something that's essentially an empty shell and you build, a kitchen and you hire a team, and it's not different from building a business. I mean, it is a business, obviously.
Right.
But for me, it's mostly been technology that I have accidentally, I was not a nerd. I wish I was a nerd, because I think being a nerd is a good thing. It tends to come with being really good and early with computer and understanding, how to code and how to do things, which I think, is probably one of the most essential skill sets that one could have. Coding is math, and it's being a logic thinker. But so I sort of in the early 2000s kind of stumbled upon, as a relatively young guy, technology as a sector, or TMT, so telecoms, media, and information technology broadly, right? And so I was brought up in Sweden, and at the time we were super early. I don't know why, but we just had really good internet, right? Good internet connection, pretty good speed, probably the fastest at the time across the globe, and it's a cold country, so you sit inside quite a lot. Like half of the year you spend sitting inside, and therefore I guess we just had there were a few things. We had good internet, but then we had historically we've been kind of a nation that has invented a lot of stuff, right? From the dynamite to in telecoms we've done a lot, but like the GPS, the computer mouse, like a lot of things that people use every day is actually Swedish inventions by some fantastic inventors. And so I think we've had that curious mind where with some people have been able to kind of look into the crystal ball and sort of say, I think this is going to be part of the future. And so with good speed and that, technology was something. And so I grew up with that, and we had, some of the largest European and global, I should say, during the first .com boom before it became a crash. We're talking like early 2000s here. And this whole thing kind of started in 1995, and from there it kind of grew, but it was like really fringe. There were some, people that you would call alternatives, back then, that was kind of, playing in this arena. And of course, some money people that kind of thought, maybe I put some money into this because this could maybe be the future, right? But so we had a lot of these guys, in Sweden for whatever reason, and we built some global companies. So I started buying stocks. I was interested in this stuff, um, and then you know I wasn't someone who was technically savvy or gifted, but
Hmm.
I kind of like understood the business side of this. Like this could actually become something, right? And at the time, people did not really understand. Like nobody made any money. It was all kind of, yeah, in the future, this is going to be this transformative kind of paradigm shift where the fourth industrial revolution is going to be based on the internet, right? Which, of course,
Right.
today we know is the truth, right? But so I had interest in that. So fast forward, in my early 20s, I moved to Hong Kong. There was this opportunity to essentially go and live in the New York of Asia or the London of Asia,
Hmm.
and it was a high concentration of yappies, which today we call millennials, but we called them yappies back then. So people
Okay.
that, were fairly young, had a high disposable income, they had a penchant for lifestyle, they liked eating out, wining and dining, traveling, fashion, all these different things. So I moved to Hong Kong to basically start the first digital, fully online based magazine, and this was in '05. So kind of post the first crash, I guess.
Right.
And we kind of built that to the leading uh, digital luxury and lifestyle publishing group across Asia Pacific, right? And it was called Lifestyle Asia. We started in Hong Kong, then Singapore. Then I moved to Singapore. I kind of replicated what we did in Hong Kong, and then from there to Thailand, set up the Bangkok side, and then Malaysia. Then we sold that to Hubert Berta Media after about 11 years of operating the business,
Okay.
and stayed with them for a couple of years. Handover, sat on the board, helped them with digital transformation. Uh, helped the group to kind of become a new media group from being more sort of static, print based, and so on and so
Right.
forth. Yeah, so that's. But I've done marketplaces, so digital publishing marketplaces. We had one of the largest marketplaces for the Canton region, which is sort of Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and that's where you kind of speak not Mandarin, you speak Cantonese, which is the language from Hong Kong. And so we did that in English and we did that in Cantonese. So you could put up an ad so it was a marketplace that was, for anything essentially. So a lot of people that were selling their car, they would put it up, but they would kind of get that ad up in two languages. And I think that was fairly early. Like people tend to just have a marketplace. It was like one side. We built that into one of the leading newspapers at the time, and we were pondering with merging that with Tencent's marketplace at this time. And then Tencent kind of told us, and they were like 20 people at the time. It was a really small kind of operation, and they said, we're gonna go into gaming and apps, and we're like, apps. We were still. This is '07. We were using WAP, WAP, and that of
Hmm.
course didn't work because no one could connect to the internet. But then the first iPhone came, I think in '08, and that kind of changed everything, right?
Right.
And so, but yeah, so done marketplaces and done a lot of different things in the tech space. Uh, and then of course MyPetGo was a project where I felt like I needed to do something with more meaning, but I guess we can get to that a little bit later.
I absolutely want to ask you about that, but I'm curious about how big was Lifestyle Asia when you sold it?
I mean, we were the largest digital media player kind of in the region. We sold it to Berta, and Berta is a private company, so we can't mention anything because we're not allowed to. But it was a fairly substantial business. On a group level, uh, as we consolidated, we turned over 3 billion euros. We can say top line,
Okay.
but we were a part of that. Towards the end, I probably had yeah a bit over 100 staff
Oh wow.
in that business across various markets, and we were trying to kind of achieve economy of scale, universal tech stack. We had multiple magazines. They were all digital, right? But we
Right.
had the leading kind of high society magazine for the region. We had the leading kind of lifestyle magazine, which was, of course, my crown jewel, which I started. Then we had the leading men's magazine, which was very fashion forward for gents. Then we had the leading Mandarin in Mandarin, then, which is the Chinese. Also, fashion avant-garde, very kind of forward-looking magazine. And we had Hola, which is a Spanish magazine, but we had that in Thailand. We call it Hello, so that was kind of a license agreement. We had Top Gear. We had a bunch of stuff, right?
Right.
Bird
Yeah.
as a group had 500 brands. We
Wow.
sold to them. So
Okay.
yeah.
So, well, what I thought was interesting when I read what you sent in and everything, you said that I think it was the easiest thing you've done is actually leaving that company. It was one of the kind of like one of the maybe not simpler things that you've done, probably pretty complicated, but it was like not a big deal because a lot of my friends that have exited companies go through this period of like depression and kind of this like existential, what do I do with my life and all of that. Did you have any of that when you went through this process?
I mean, so I sold that in 2016, and I was like the one from our side that did kind of the whole transaction. So I sat with all the lawyers and and I kind of negotiated everything. And my co-founders, they kind of took a backseat on that. Um,
Yeah.
so I guess I was more prepared and ready for what was coming because I was so kind of into the deal of the whole. But
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
when we signed that deal, it was a bit complicated. We had different
Mhm.
bidders we had the two major competitors, the two sort of regional for the Asia Pac region, the two largest luxury and lifestyle groups, they were bidding on us at the same time, unknowingly.
Okay.
Um, and and so the I was very prepared, but initially the reason why we chose Bird over the other one, which was a company called EdiPress, a Swiss outfit, was that EdiPress said it didn't need any help. They just wanted our IP and our brand,
Hmm.
and they wanted to keep everything separate, and which was probably the right thing. With Bird, I was like, we want your digital know-how. We want you to transfer this and help us with all our other print magazines because our online presence is really weak. We need you. We need your brand. We want everything, right? And so we kind of liked that humility that they had, and they kind of said that the guy I did the deal with after we had done the transaction, which was 7th December 2016 in Hong Kong, and we were out partying and drinking. We were at the three Michelin restaurant
Yeah.
with him, right? And we picked up the tab because that's how it's supposed to be. Um, and and so one of our investors who was at the dinner, our major investor, said, "I think this guy is going to leave, so you're probably not going to work with him, right?" And we were like, "Oh, that's so weird." And we at the time, we probably had I had 10 glasses of wine in me, so I didn't think that much of it, right? But
Right.
then on the 17th of December, he calls me out of the blue and says, "Hey, Richard, I hope this doesn't come as a shock to you, but I've decided to leave Berta." So I was like, "Okay, yeah, actually, it comes a bit as a shock because we have like a whole integration plan that you and I've come up with, right?
Right.
It's like, how do we actually merge the things, which is very difficult." So anyway, so he's out, we come in to essentially uh, we then get integrated. So we need to leave all our offices very quickly. And then we have to move into their offices. And then you have
Hmm.
like these guys that are defending what's theirs. And they are the old guard, they're the print guys. And they're like, now here comes the younger guys and girls that are the tech people. They're gonna take
Hmm.
our job away. They're gonna pull our rug away, and we're gonna be out of here. And so it was this very, very bad friction. This CEO that we did the deal with, he hadn't really sold it to the guys, right? Like, here's why it's good. We
Okay.
bought this company. Here's why it's good. Here's why we're doing it. Here's how I think it can help you. Um, so it was a lot of backstabbing and office politics when that happened. And so I'm coming back to your question. But initially we signed 12 months. They had an extension which they can pull on after 6 months if they felt that the knowledge transfer wasn't there. And they did that immediately on the day of 6 months. They said, we want an extension for another 12 months. We said, okay, fine. And then during the first 6 months, it was evident that these guys, what they had told us where they were with their business, they were nowhere close to
Oh
that, right?
wow.
So we said, okay. And part of the deal was you need to come in and help us with our thing. And if you help with that, you're going to get a bigger end, like a bigger tail of the, of you, you're going to get a second tranche or a third tranche as payments, but it's based on the group activity, not
Okay.
just, what you sold us. And so we then said, look, you gave us the wrong information. The guy left. We had this whole integration has been a mess. And then one of my co-founders left in
Oh,
that. He's like, I've had it with these guys. Like they can't teach me anything. And I'm like, dude, they're not supposed to teach you anything. We're supposed to teach them things. That's why they bought us, right? But
right.
he's like, out of self-respect, I don't want to deal with these guys. Like I got nothing in common with them. They can F off. And I'm like, okay, fine. So then we could renegotiate our deal, me and the other co-founder that was left. And so we then changed that deal. But then they said, okay, we got to add another year. So coming back to your question, I ended up staying there for 48 months
Oh wow.
on a
Okay, that's a
on
long
a
time.
12-month contract. And so I was with that business that I started for 16 years. So was I sad leaving? Did I have a depression? No. I had none of that because I was very prepared. And at the end, I think it was kind of almost a relief, right? It's like, okay, the show must go on, but I don't necessarily need to be the conductor any longer. And so that was quite nice to actually walk away from it. And look, I think since I left, they have probably not monetized very well because we were very good at that. But I know they've grown traffic tremendously, and
Mhm.
it's still, I think, the one of the leading assets that they have in the Asia Pac portfolio. Um, so
Yeah.
it's quite good.
So what I mean, what would you if you could go back, what would you have done differently on that?
I mean, I would have done a lot differently. I think, I think, you know, when you think about building a team, um, don't build a team with three salespeople that are great at selling because you're going to end up being quite good at monetizing it, but you're probably going to have a pretty bad product.
Mhm.
So you kind of need like, someone who is good at managing money, like some CFO type of person who is like very responsible with money, very good with paper, very good with spreadsheets, very good with kind of structuring things, very good with, helping to raise the cash. Then you need obviously a businessman who's really good with negotiation and sales and all these different things, who can also be a leader. But then I think you need a really good product person, a really good tech person. The tech person is your CTO. So I think for
Right.
us, we kind of lacked a strong CTO with that um, throughout that journey. I mean, it was okay towards the end, but like I think if I could redo it, I would have had a really good head of product and a really good CTO at the start and really kind of focus on that. I think on a deal, when I look back at the deal, it's like maybe I should have taken that EdiPress deal instead,
I was
where
going to ask you.
where
Yeah.
where where things were separated because they probably had a point. They could kind of see that friction coming. No need to move into our offices, you know, um, and and I think. Um, yeah, I was just a little bit too nice sometimes. I should have maybe fired people earlier,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and changed the team a little bit. I was a little bit um, too nice to people, I
Right.
think.
Too loyal, gave him too much time,
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
yeah, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I've been there too. Um, well, I mean, I'm curious about that period after. So, obviously we're going to get into what you're doing now, but you sold the company, you were there for, you said 48 months on a 12-month contract, which is crazy. Um,
Yeah.
and then what happened after that? Like, what was the period of time? Did you take some time to enjoy the money or what did you do?
I mean, I did not.
Oh,
I had no holiday. I've never had a gap year or a gap month. I never taken extended leave. Um, I never backpacked in my life. Um, I worked, worked, worked. So I'm still that way, sadly. But I think I was talking to someone that I'm doing a deal with now, quite recently, and I said, "Look, dude, this is probably the last thing I'm gonna do, and then I'm gonna be like non-operational, and I'm just gonna invest in some stuff." And he's like, "Good luck to you, dude." He was just
Right.
laughing. He's like, "It's not gonna happen." And he's based in LA, and he's like he's probably 60, um, and he's still working like crazy and got like juggling different ventures at the same time. And he's like, "It's not gonna happen, Richard. I can tell you." And I said, "Okay, fine." Um, and I said, "Well, I'm not going to be like operational operation." He's like, "What do you mean? Like, you probably so." But what happened essentially was I left, and I had been starting to tinker on like what is that next step. And I think at the time we were sort of looking a lot like this was the let's see. So we're talking 2018, 19. It was the whole
Mhm.
ESG, sustainability became a thing,
Right.
Beyond Burger and Impossible. You were supposed to eat plant-based because it's good for you, right?
Right. Yeah.
Good for the environment, all of that stuff, right? So, I mean, I subscribed to all of that. I was eating, Beyond was my brand. I was trading the stock up and down every day, and I was eating the products and don't eat them anymore, if anyone is wondering, because I've just become a little bit wiser. Uh, but so what I built was a venture builder that we called a future builder, right? And so the notion was we're a bit like a venture builder, but we have some of our own capital, we have our own team, and we focus on three core areas. So we're going to build ventures that can tackle problems and solve these problems that are addressing issues around people, planet, and pets. We said right, so the
Right.
three P's. And as we were, and the idea was building five ventures concurrently, right? Like
Oh wow.
same tech stack and kind of And so we had like five pretty decent ideas. And then what happened was one of the ideas was MyPetGo, and it became so complicated and so complex that we sort of said, look, let the venture builder become MyPetGo, and we just focus all our energy on this because this is probably out of the five, this is the one that has the most potential. And so what
Okay.
is then MyPetGo? So MyPetGo is like a Whoop strap, but for your dog. Initially, we were like a feline canine dual offering, but then we kind of
Mm.
quickly had to say, look, let's get the canine right, and then we can move on to the feline.
Sure.
Felines are cats, for those that are wondering. Um, and so what we have is a product that kind of looks like that, and it comes in a box, quite Apple-esque. It has a main sensor on the back of it, which is a temperature
Yeah.
gauge, and then inside of the wearable you have a bunch of kind of non-intrusive sensors.
It's pretty
And
small
what we
for people that aren't for listening and not watching. I mean, it's maybe
yeah,
like it looks like it's 2 inches by an inch or something like that. It's a
yeah,
pretty
it's
pretty
similar
slim
to
thing.
that, to your AirPod
AirPod case.
kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, AirPod case. And and so what it does, it sits around the neck of the dog. It comes with a custom collar depending on the size of the neck, because we need to have that sensor going in against the fur. And we look at three of the kind of vital biomarkers or health markers, which is heart rate, pulse, respiration, and then we look at temperature, right? And then
Okay.
with these four values, there's a lot of things we can determine, right? But these are kind of the core vitals that, let's say, your vet would look at if you bring in your pet and you say, look, I think something is wrong. And so your pet would kind of start like asking you questions to triage it, but then would also take some values, right? So we do that. We report on these in real time. As we spot abnormalities in these values, we send you a push notification. We say if this particular marker is out of range, um, don't panic. There could be a multitude of reasons to why, but if this marker doesn't go back into kind of range, we'll ping you in due course, and you get kind of a second one. As you get the second one, if it hasn't gone back in, you can then triage it. You can use a symptom checker. You can call a televet, and then you can share all of this data to that person on the other end, so they can kind of better diagnose over the phone. And you can do that through a dynamic link. So WhatsApp, email, whatever you prefer, Signal,
Right.
Telegram, whatever uh, your preference may be. And so we do the health markers, we do behavior traits, we look at mobility. So that's your kind of activity, inactivity, step count, calories burned, like pretty much everything these guys do. But we do more, right? Because you know yourself and you can feel if something is wrong, but you don't know if something is wrong with your pet most of the time, right? They're very good
Sure.
at hiding
Yeah.
their emotions, right?
Yeah.
And of course there are things you can look at like the eyes and the tail and there are telling things, but broadly speaking, it's hard to know, right? And so uh, as we see these, we give you the next step recommendations. But then what we've built is a task based program. We call that longevity, and it's a program where we look at three things, right? So we look at um, we kind of give you daily tasks, and you're supposed to conduct these in a timely way. And if you do that, you kind of get points, and the points can be offset for rewards, and the rewards can be used sort of in a shop, right? And and so these kind of three pillars are uh, mobility, which is the right amount of walk and exercise, but also rest. An aging pet needs rest, like us humans. One of the most important parts of longevity, if you want to believe Brian Johnson, the guy who don't want to die, is
Yeah.
sleeping, right? And so I actually subscribe to that a lot. This is why I have this. I kind of look at sleep
Yeah.
pretty much only with this wearable. Um, but I got all the wearables on the human side just because I'm in the space and I have to. So the first one is that. The second pillar is nutrition and hygiene, right? Feed it the right amount of food, depending on the breed, age, health condition. Take your deworming tablet. Give the meds if your pet is medicated and needs meds, supplements, vitamins, like all of these different things, right?
Mhm.
Hygiene, grooming, cleaning ears, cleaning tear stains, cutting nails so they can grip and stop, right? Like there's a lot of things you can do to avoid accidents and to ensure that your pet don't get an ear infection because you never clean the ears, right? It's like,
Right.
hey, if you don't clean your own ears, it's gonna end up in a mess, right? There is
Mhm.
no difference with your dog, right? If you don't brush the teeth of your dog and you complain it smells bad, like, okay, it smells bad for a reason, right? But you have to actually, dental care is super important. And it's a very, very rapidly growing industry in the pet space. There's a lot of issues with oral care. Um, so we kind of do that and recommend what to do across that. And then the third pillar is preventative care and health screenings, right? And if you do these things in a timely manner, you're going to have a happier pet, a healthier pet, and a pet that's going to have extended lifespan. And we're trying to kind of quantify this through data and to kind of help to prove that there are ways, if you leverage the tech and the program in an effective way, that you're gonna be able to maybe give your pet another year or another 2 years, right? It's going to take some time to prove that, but that's the thesis, right?
Yeah. So, did you start this with your own capital, or did you go out and raise capital for this?
Yeah, I started with my own capital. Bad
Wow.
idea.
Bad
Bad
idea.
idea.
Okay, yeah, I want to talk to you about that because obviously you had your exit and you dealt with private equity. Sounds like private equity firms. Um, I started my company with my own money, but I started as a blogger. So like I saved $3,000 for my teaching salary, and then I started my website, and it's grown from there. But um, if you could go back, you would go and just raise funding instead of using your own cash.
I mean, I had funding lined up, but the guy disappeared, which
Oh,
happens.
yeah, yeah.
And so I had to kind of keep on self funding. And then I have raised money, of course, since. But I think it depends on what you're doing. If you're going to get into hardware, middleware, firmware, and software, and you're going to do like proprietary algorithms that are reading health markers, that's going to take a long time, and you're going to
Hmm.
need a lot of different skill sets. You're not going to be able to wing it by yourself or with your two buddies. Like you're going to need cash. You're going to need cash for human capital. And you can give people shares, and and that works for a while. But after a while, you actually have to people need to eat, right?
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
and 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 so it gets tricky. So I think it depends on what you're doing, right? I admire the people that self fund, bootstrap, and build a business on it, right? But
Hmm.
sometimes it's good to take some outside capital to alleviate some stress
Sure.
and to also remember to live life. I'm very bad at this myself because I work a lot, um, and I'm mindful of it. So I'm trying to get better at it. But I think you know sharing the risk with some other people, i.e., the investors that give you some money, is okay. If you can get strategic investors that can also come in with strategic help and support, especially if you're a solo founder, that could be very beneficial and on many levels, right? Like one level would be just to have some people to speak to about your problems, right? Like it
Right.
gets super lonely being a solopreneur versus being an entrepreneur that has many co-founders, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and so there is no right and wrong. I think it depends on what you're doing, the complexity of what you're building. Like you couldn't go and build a rocket company with your own cash. Like
Right.
not even Elon is bankrolling his own stuff. I mean, he is to a degree, but he also raises a lot of cash because it is very expensive
Sure.
and it's going to cost money. So that's just how it is.
Yeah. Did you feel like as you've brought on, you've brought on investors, I mean, has there been, what's the pressure like from the investors that are wanting a return, or if there's something that slows down, they weren't expecting, something happens in your roadmap. Have you dealt with that, or is it more about finding the right people to invest in your company that kind of understand what you're doing, how long it's going to take?
I mean, I think I think trying to find investors that have patience is what everybody wants to do. If you find professional investors, they tend to have a time frame on their
Mm-hmm.
investment when they want to see a return, and therefore there's going to be more pressure. Um, I think um, I have a right investors. They're fine. I mean, there are some that are always asking annoying questions. Like you send them an update and they kind of ask the same question every time, and you're like, haven't we been through this already? Like, why are you the only director? It's like because I am,
Right.
and there is no need to have another one, right? It's fully
Yeah.
compliant, right? Um, and I own 70% of it, so it's okay, right? We don't have a fiduciary board. That's fine. Will we have one day? Maybe. Maybe not.
Right.
We have an advisory board, but it's a strategic one. It's okay. We kind of do the same thing. Um, but you've invested in me, and so you should trust me, right? That I have your best interest here. And so I think you know it's it, it, it investors are uh, great in many ways. You kind of need them, but there are
Yeah.
some very difficult ones too that uh, unfortunately take away a lot of value, right? They don't add any value. And I think, like, I don't know what the statistics are, but 80-90% of investors actually extrapolate value as
Yeah.
opposed to provide value beyond that cash. And so that's just how it is, right? But you gotta, yeah.
Yeah. What would be what's like, if you're giving advice to somebody that's thinking about this, going out and raising money, what would your advice in terms of red flags be? Like, don't do this.
I mean, people asking for board seats early on and like try to avoid people that clearly are wanting a lot of power and control, right? This
Interesting.
is
Yeah.
your business. Like you're going to need to have the lion's share of it and you're going to need to steer it, right? If they're going to come in and tell you exactly what to do, why don't they go and build the same business themselves then if it's that easy, right? Like you don't need that. You do not need someone breathing down your neck. That is not going to be helpful. With that said, the right investors that have your back, you can bounce up anything with them. Uh, you know, there is no reason why you can't be brutally honest with the hardship, right? It's
Right.
tough. Like you're gonna have big problems, right? Um, and I think if investors always believe that things are hunky dory when they're not, because most often you're gonna have a couple of near death experiences when you're an entrepreneur, right? Like
Sure.
you are like, I mean, I've had a multitude, right? Where it's like this. thing is going nowhere.
Yeah.
I can't pay myself. I can't pay for anything. Everybody's pissed at me, and this is just like, what am I doing, right? And you can feel that, you know, one evening, and then you, you wake up the next day, and you're like, I'm gonna bugger on. It's okay.
Right.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
bugger on it. Yeah, that's yeah. Come on, I'm not gonna throw in the towel yet. And then, so it's emotional. It's a roller coaster being a founder. You get sort of a little bit better at controlling that emotion over time, but it is tough, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've had many times
it's
where I thought I was going out of business, and you've got people on your payroll, and it's like all of a sudden you're like, I'm not getting paid anymore. How did this how did this happen?
yeah.
And I've been through that several times over the last decade. But um, so where are you right now in your roadmap? Have you taken this to market? Can people buy it yet?
People can buy it at mypetgo.com. We are primarily a B2B2C brand, and so
Okay.
we do end-to-end white labeling. So essentially, we provide the program, we run the program, we run the applications, we provide a wearable, we ship it to the end consumer if the partner prefers that way, or we can ship in bulk to them and they kind of package it with whatever their core business is. We build in their core business into the application, so we got kind of like an ecosystem marketplace side to it. Um, and and so that's kind of where we can push volume, and there is no customer acquisition cost
Right.
really. So we kind of, it's really hard to be the next D2C darling, I think. And but like as a showcase brand, we got MyPetGo, and people can buy that, and it's mostly as a like that's our shop window to kind of
Right.
show other people. So
So it's
yeah, so we're
mostly
we're yeah.
you're going to the vets basically, and you're working out deals with them, helping them install this software, and then they are the ones that are selling to the consumers.
No, so we we actually go to pet insurance companies, other
Oh
pet tech
wow.
companies, pet marketplaces, and we say, look, um, what's your current headache, right? And that headache tends to be, okay, we have a customer that we engage with very seldom, right? So it's an
Mhm.
unfaithful customer. So if you think of pet insurance, they may only communicate with that one customer um, every year before renewal, right? And
Right.
and so and so that's the relationship, right? And they say, look, unless that person claims, there is not that much that we do throughout that cycle. So, how do we create a product that is still insurance but that becomes sticky? And that's kind of where we come in and say we
Yeah.
built this engagement program. It's task based. We then help them with the rewards, the coins, how to do that whole thing, the sort of the gamification of it. But then we can build in, like, you can store your insurance documentation in the app. You have the journal. The crux of it is we can ensure that the pet becomes healthier, and when it's healthier, it requires less human intervention.
Right.
And so this means that the
That's
claims will be
fascinating.
lowered claims, better retention, right? So the customer will
Yeah.
stay longer because they're offering now this wearable with a plan, with a program, and it kind of becomes a completely different product, right? Plus they differentiate from all their peers in the market because they have this additional offering. So we become a lead generation tool as well. So it's like lead gen, retention, and
Yeah.
we're cutting claims. And these are the three kind of areas that an insurance company is looking at. So if we look at the US market, the penetration of pet insurance is, 2.5, 3 percentage points of
Mm.
total population.
Yeah.
Super low, right? My native country, Sweden, is whatever it is, 80, 90%
Oh
penetrated, right?
wow.
So like if you could get to almost a default rate in the US, which will take time, right? But even if you could get to 10 points or 15 points, like,
Sure. That'd be
it's a big
massive.
market, right? It's
Yeah.
110 million dogs in the US, right? And somewhat similar, a little bit less cats, but like it's a big market, right? Um, and so what we're looking at with pet insurance is we want to become the standard, right? So when you buy the plan, you get the wearable, we co-brand it in their name, we make the app in their name, we run the app. It's end to end, completely frictionless, headacheless for the guys. They get the data, they can use that data to understand their customers better and kind of look at patterns. Like, why are we getting claims by 2000 Labradors? Like, what's wrong
Right.
with the Labradors? Like, what's happening, right? And they can start to kind of make use of this data, and it can become really quite helpful for them. So that's the use case of an insurance company. If we look at a use case of an e-com guy, right, who's selling all sorts of pet products. Let's say that today they're selling the kibbles to a bunch of customers, but they're not getting them to buy the grooming products or the dental products or
Sure.
the toys or the treats or the deworming tablets or all the other stuff. But they have that too, right? So it's like, okay, so we have a customer that's a customer, but it's only faithful for that kibble bag that gets dropped once a month. Okay, how do I get the other business? So we then build in these SKUs for them into the longevity program, and we kind of create a super nice app, gamified, where the rewards and points kind of give you discounts for other products. So there is ways for us to help them drive up engagement and
Mhm.
create a customer that's much more loyal, right? So that's the use case for the e-com guy who tends to look at, hey, I need a more loyal customer, and I would like to
Right.
get that. I want to drive up my ARPU, my average revenue per user, and so we can do that for them. And then if it's like a longevity supplement company,
Mhm.
then they're selling some subscription with these amazing whatever pills that you should give your pet, and they're going to live longer, right? But like,
Right.
how do you actually prove out that thesis, right? So if you were to, in that subscription, add a wearable, you can start to look at activity levels. Like, is my aging pet becoming more active by actually having these, by eating the pills, right? So I think we can start to quantify that. So it depends. Like, there's different ways to leverage what we have depending on the partner. Now we're starting to kind of acquire some companies or partner with some other companies, and we kind of put them in as additional Lego bricks. So
Mhm.
things that can fit into what we have, we're building them kind of in there too, like as additional feature sets. But it depends on the wants and needs of our partners.
What's the reception been like so far? Especially, I'm curious about the insurance companies. Was it kind of like because honestly, it sounds like kind of a no brainer, but I don't run an insurance
Mhm.
company. I mean, have they been pretty receptive to it?
I mean, they all love it, right?
Yeah,
But is it easy to get them to sign on the dotted line? No, it's not. It's a
sure.
it's a regulated industry. It's a
Mm,
financial company, right? And so there is a lot of red tape. Like, can they give a wearable for free? They can't really, because the gifting in the US, let's say, is only $20 for an insurance company. It can't be valued more than that. So, I mean, there are ways around that. So, but there is a lot of hurdles you got to deal with. So insurance is a very good channel if you can make it a standard.
mm,
But they all love it. They all want to do it. What I do is, if I partner with someone in the US, that is my partner. I don't partner with anybody else in the category of insurance,
right,
because if I do that, then the differentiation that I sold this one partner, it's gone, right? Like,
right.
so I need to have my integrity, and kind of, even though it's white label, right? So but I can partner with someone in Germany and France and UK and Spain and Italy. The globe is big enough. So
Yeah.
so yeah.
How was it more difficult to build the hardware or the software, or was there anything that you could piggyback off of when you were doing this? Because I mean, I'm guessing there wasn't a lot that you could kind of model it after.
No reference point. So the hardware was an absolute bitch to build, I tell you. Especially when you've been building software for 20 years, and I'm not
Sure.
the most technically savvy guy, and then all of a sudden I have to deal with hardware, and I have to deal with firmware,
Mm,
um, and then all the algorithms and everything built. So I mean, I really had to rewire myself in, like, getting quite skilled at understanding the complexity of hardware and firmware, and like, what are the limitations, what can you do. Like a lot of the manufacturing partners and tech people are like, Richard, we cannot do this, and I'm like, yes, there is a way. They're like, no, no, you don't understand because you don't understand
Right.
this type of tech. And I say, well, you need a guy like me who says we will find a way, right? Then
Mm.
sometimes when I kind of sit around the table and I kind of challenge these guys with like a different viewpoint, right? Like, you know, lateral thinking, right? Because they think like always within the limitations. And I have no, like for me, I have a different way of viewing it because I don't
Sure.
know as much as they do, right? So for
Right.
me, those limitations aren't there. And I say, what if we were to do this? Could we do that? Then sometimes they were sitting, they would look at each other and they'd be like, huh? They're like, where do you get that from? I said, well, it's just a question. Like, couldn't we just do it this way? And they're like, oh, that, yeah. Well, I mean, it's not right, but yeah, I guess you could. Like, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that could work. And so, but yeah, I think the hardware was really hard. I think AI in the pet care space is such a new thing. It's at the infancy, and therefore, um, there is not a whole lot of reference points, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, what data are you basing this on, right? And I think when you look at academia, um, there's not a whole lot out there. And if you start kind of crawling the World Wide Web, it's just not fantastic for it, for what you're looking for. Um, so I think, it hasn't been so much like, you can find users and you can put monitors on them, but then it's like, how do I best calibrate these values? I
Hmm.
need to have a vet next to these dogs. Um, and I need to cross-reference my values using medical equipment that the vets normally use, and then I need to calibrate backwards, right?
Right.
And so you need like a farm with an array of different breeds and ages and sexes and known medical conditions, unknown medical. It takes a very, very long time. And when you were building software to host content, which is what I did,
Yeah.
partly before. It was just like, and sometimes I said, it's so unfair. First, we need to find all this traffic, all the users, and then we need to go and find a customer who wants to buy this audience, right?
Right.
Like, like it's just so much easier just to sell it once. Now we need to sell it twice. We need to sell it first to the audience, and then we got to go sell that audience to the advertiser, right?
Right.
Um, and and so now I think it's just even harder. But look, I think the hardware has been tough. I'm trying to be as independent I can from the hardware and do like all the magic on the software level.
Right. What? So you mentioned AI and it has AI capabilities. Is this something that's
Mhm.
like leveraging a chat GPT or something like that, or is it something
No,
completely different?
we built everything ourselves.
Wow.
Uh, so what we do essentially is we extrapolate uh, the X, Y, and Z values from the health from the sensors, right? The
Hmm.
sensors are, a gyroscope, an accelerometer, like standard sensors that you would find in wearables. But they themselves do not provide the health marker. So the health marker is AI driven, right?
Okay.
Those X, Y, and Z values goes into an AI model. The AI model then feeds out the health marker. And and in order to understand whether you are close to the ground truth or far from the ground truth, um, there is just an endless calibration. We're maybe 85, 90% there in terms of our values, but that's okay. We don't have to be 100% accurate because we look at the rate of change, right?
Hmm.
So as we see the rate of change in a particular value, that's when we send you that note, that push notification, right? And I think, marrying software, um, medicine, science, and data. It's like it's a complex thing to do. So we have AI in terms of the health markers, but then we got AI in terms of personal recommendations when we send these next step recommendations and so on and so forth. I think OpenAI and Anthropic and there are some great tools that you can take that's there on the
Mm.
market, and you can pay to use them and you can integrate them. And I think most people do, and rightfully so. There are fantastic products out there. I think, um, you know, we have other partners that we're doing things with that have come very far in terms of regenerative or Gen AI,
Mm.
in terms of pet care, and we will probably integrate them into what we're doing and empower kind of each other. So, you know, that's kind of the new things that we're working on. There's a lot of big plans happening in
It's
in what we're doing shortly, right? So it's like I'm always looking at the big thing, right? It's like, okay,
yeah.
do we do a reverse merger? Do we take over a Nasdaq company? It's possible. Um, do we create a big group where we, gobble up all the good companies out there, and we go and kind of package it up and we do a trade sales? Like, what do we do? What's the end goal? I'm a capitalist, right? Like,
Hmm.
I'm as far, away from the uh, the socialists that once conquered my country, with their nonsense, and before them, obviously, the evil brother, which was communism, right?
Mm.
So I'm at the other end of the spectrum, but I don't care so much about materialistic things, but I do care about, like, you know uh, progress and prosperity, and like what that can bring and what you can do with that to, like,
Sure.
help others, right? Um, and so, yeah, we're looking at clever ways to scale very, very quickly, right?
It
So,
sounds massively complicated, to be
no, no,
honest with
I
you.
mean, not really. Let's say that you go and try to find 1 million users
Hmm.
for your wearable the traditional way, which would be, performance marketing, let's say,
Yeah.
okay? Because retail takes time, and nobody sells it really in the shop, and it's just collecting dust. Like, it's hard. Unless you're a very, very well-known brand, right? You're an Apple Watch, it's fine, right?
Right.
Um, so, so let's say I want to get 1 million users, right? And let's say my customer acquisition cost is $100 a pop, right? So for me to get that million would be 100 million in investment, right?
Hmm.
And then my manufacturing cost is, say, $50. So just on manufacturing and customer acquisition, I'm $150 million in now for my 1 million users. Okay. Now, let's say I go and buy a pet company,
Hmm.
and let's say that they have 1 million users, and all I'm paying is 10, 15, 20 million for that company. Now, this company does not only have 1 million users, they also have $50 million in revenue for their core
Hmm.
business. Let's
Right.
say it's a marketplace or it's an e-com or whatever, right? Now I take this, now I go and buy this company, and then I give every person that's a customer a wearable, right? They get it for free, right? So my cost now has been halved, right? So my manufacturing cost is still there, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, so it's still the 50 million. But I bought this company for 20 million. So I'm 70 in instead of paying 150, which I would have done on the other side. The other
Right.
side would have given me no 50 million in revenue, right? So I think what I'm looking at is, how can I buy that distribution, own it, and then get revenue and other things and kind of change it into my company, right? Because now I've done the hard work of building my foundation,
Sure.
and I'm a seasoned entrepreneur, so I'm not going to do the old mistake that I did
Hmm.
before, which is grinding and slowly building up. It's like, okay, I got all the stuff. Let's just do it faster. Like, I know what I take me to the end goal, so I'm just gonna, So that's kind of what I'm looking at. These kind of things these days.
Yeah, I love it. I know we're kind of running up on time. I had one more question of just about the product. How many animals are wearing this right now?
Mm, we have, like, the people testing it. We have a couple of thousand,
Okay.
and then commercially we have, you know a lot more than that.
Okay.
But that's like our test panel. Like, that's where we do everything on those particular animals, right? Run all the tests and validate and calibrate the data. The commercial partners, we have a couple of commercial partners, and yeah, it's a whole lot more. Like, you know, way, way, way over the 10,000 mark. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you noticed anything interesting from the data of like a specific kind of dog tends to get more sick than another one or anything like that?
I mean, I think, the whole idea is to kind of do like peer-to-peer comparisons. Like, okay,
Mm,
so I have a Maltese, he's 10 years old, super anxious, right?
yeah.
Um, like all toy breeds. And so I think what we can see with Maltese is that they are very anxious dogs, right? We can see there's a lot of fluctuations in heart rate. Um, and so I think uh, one of the things that we want to do moving forward is really kind of getting very, very good at data insights and being able to give you more recommendations. But yeah, I mean, we're seeing, you know, we've discovered some interesting data, but I think, it's still kind of early days.
Sure. Sure.
A lot of it. I think we're you know we haven't had any dogs die on us, which is good.
That's
Uh,
good.
that's good. It's inevitable. It will probably happen, right? But um, we have helped quite a lot of pet parents with
Yeah.
different things, which is very rewarding. Coming back to like, okay, this is actually I may be able to make some good money on this, but it's also a very meaningful product where I can help pet owners, their pets, and also pet professionals in that I can help to streamline their work a bit and save time and so on and so forth.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, I think your story is fascinating. I wish I could talk to you for another 2 hours and just kind of pick your brain about stuff. But where do you want people to go? What do you want people to do after this podcast? Can you just tell me?
Yeah, I mean, look, if anybody wants, um, to ask anything, you can go to my LinkedIn. So that would be just my name, Richard Nilsson. Put MyPetGo there, you'll find me. That's the only place I'm somewhat active. I mean, I'm not
Okay.
super active, but I'm quite private. But I'm there. You want to check out MyPetGo, you can do that. Not the best website at the moment. It's being rebuilt, but look, it's there. You have an interest in a partnership or you have an interest in entrepreneurship, you want to ask anything, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I usually reply, unless you're selling me, whatever,
Something.
software
Yeah.
services or lead generation, inbound, outbound calls or something. Like I
Right.
do get a few of those. But anything else, like if you have a venture, you have an idea, you have, a question, or you have a big problem, you want a second opinion, happy to help anytime.
Awesome. All right. Well, Richard, good luck. I'm rooting for you. I would love to actually have the product someday. I think it sounds really cool, and I think it's going to help a lot of pet owners. So, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, man.
Thank you for your time, and send me your address, and I'll send you a wearable over.
Done.